Introduction. Once upon a time, in the magical land of Equestria, there came an era when the ideals of friendship gave way to greed, selfishness, paranoia, and the jealous reaping of dwindling space and natural resources. Lands took up arms against their neighbors. The end of the world occurred much as we had predicted. The world was plunged into an abyss of balefire and dark magic. The details are trivial and pointless. The reasons, as always, purely our own. The world was nearly wiped clean of life. A great cleansing, a magical spark struck by pony hooves quickly raged out of control. Mega spells rained from the skies. Entire lands were swallowed in flames and fell beneath the boiling oceans. Ponykind was almost extinguished, the spirits becoming part of the ambient radiation that blanketed the lands. A quiet darkness fell across the world. But it was not, as some had predicted, the end of the world. Instead, the apocalypse was simply the prologue for another bloody chapter in pony history. In the early days, thousands were spared the horrors of the Holocaust by taking refuge in enormous underground shelters known as stables. But when they emerged, they had only the hell of the wastes to greet them. All except those in Stable 2. For on that fateful day when spellfire rained from the sky, the giant steel door of Stable 2 swung closed, and never reopened. Prologue of Pip Bucks and Cutie Marks. If I'm going to tell you about the adventure of my life explain how I got to this place with these people and why I did what I'm going to do next I should probably start by explaining a little bit about Pip Bucks. What is a Pip Buck? A Pip Buck is a device worn on a foreleg just above the hoof, issued to every pony in a stable when they become old enough to start work. A blending of unicorn pony magic and science, your Pip Buck will keep a constant measure of your health and even help administer healing poultices and other medicine, track and organize everything in your saddle packs, assist in repairs, and keep all manner of notes and maps available at the hooftop. Plus, it allows you to listen to the stable broadcast whenever you would like, as it can tune into and decrypt just about any radio frequency. And that's not all. A pony's Pip Buck generates an EFSI's forward sparkle that will indicate direction and help gauge whether the ponies or creatures around you are hostile. And, perhaps most impressively, a Pip Buck can magically aid you in a fight for brief periods of time through use of the SATS Stable Tech Arcane Targeting spell. Oh, and a feature not to be forgotten, it can keep track of the location of tagged objects of people, including the wearers of other Pip Bucks. So if a pony somehow got lost don't ask me how you could get lost in a stable, but it does happen on occasion then any pony who knew the lost pony's tag could find them instantly. It can even be made to glow like a lamp. So yes, Pip Bucks really are a testament to unicorn pony arcane science. And yes, having a Pip Buck is a big advantage. So with how wonderful and miraculous all that just sounded, it's hard to impress upon ponies who never lived in a stable just how ordinary, how pedestrian, a Pip Buck was in the eyes of the ponies living in Stable 2. And why I was disappointed to have one as my cutie mark. Every pony in Stable 2 had a Pip Buck. All that stuff I mentioned, most ponies don't use even half of that. They just used it to tune into the stable broadcast listen to the sweet voice of Velvet Remedy in the evenings or the latest school singing competitions during the day. The stable had 2 soccer leagues, one which allowed SATS and one which prohibited it. Otherwise, most ponies paid their Pip Bucks almost no attention at all. The overmare issues each pony their own Pip Buck on the day of the cutie mark party usually a day or 2 after you get the mark on your flanks that tells every pony what makes you special, what you're destined to be good at. Once it shows, the overmare knows what work to assign you, you'll know your place in the stable. So no, I was not thrilled that what made me special was something that every pony had, which was a lot like being told I wasn't special at all. Sure, getting a Pip Buck as my cutie mark could have meant I was destined to become an awesome Pip Buck repair filly or something, but in reality it was like getting a cutie mark of a cutie mark. Didn't help that I was the last pony to get her cutie mark. Not surprising in retrospect. Kinda tough to find what you're supposed to be good at when what you're supposed to be good at is something you don't get until you've found what you're supposed to be good at. So I tried everything. I even tried to invent new things. As a unicorn pony myself, my innate magics allow me a level of fine manipulation that Earth ponies don't enjoy. Any pony can hold a key in their teeth and open a lock, but using multiple tools in a very delicate operation that requires precision levitation. So I decided to learn to pick locks with the bobby pin and screwdriver, and I was even getting pretty good at it. Unfortunately, it didn't get me my cutie mark. It just got me into trouble. I even, to my humiliation, went through the Kkat cutie mark aptitude test in the hopes it would guide me to what made me special. But no, my Kkat was utterly average, with only marginally higher scores in a couple areas, indicating that I might be suited for work as a pip-butt technician or a stable loyalty inspector. Two options, I should note, that were even less impressive when you considered that it was generally expected that unicorn ponies would go into either technical or administrative work. That is, except the unicorn ponies who are natural artists, like Velvet Remedy. As I said before, our inherent magic allows us the sort of fine manipulation that technical work demands. Likewise, the Overmare and her government were always unicorn ponies. It is the Overmare's unicorn magic, after all, that creates the false sunlight used to grow our underground apple orchard. And while our apples might not look like those beautiful red things in the old books, they are what keep us alive. It was only because they let me try my hooves and foot positions that I gained access to a pip-butt before receiving my own, otherwise I might never have gotten my cutie mark. Oh, my name is Little Pip. Go figure. I was given the name because I was the youngest and the smallest, and even my mother had the good sense not to call me Pipsqueak, period. Not that I don't love her, but when a filly's cutie mark is a glass of hard apple cider, period. Anyway, funny how names like that turn out sometimes. Pleased to meet you. Here is my story. Chapter 1. Out of the stable. Because the stable 2, no pony ever enters and no pony ever leaves. Gray. The walls of the maintenance stalls were all a very monotonous, dull gray. The particular wall I was staring at had the merit of being a very clean gray. Pip-butts were notoriously hardy and reliable, so being the stable's pip-butt technician meant that there were long periods of nothing to do. Being the pip-butt technician's apprentice meant that I was assigned all the mundane daily chores while my trainer took extended naps in the back room. Chores like cleaning the walls. This wall needs a mural, period. I let myself fantasize, picturing the Overmare agreeing and ordering Pellet herself to turn our entire stall into one of her brightly colorful masterpieces. Pellet was the greatest painter in Stable 2, and like every skilled artist, that made her a stable treasure. Life in Stable 2 inevitably began to eat at your spirit. You were born in the stable, you lived your whole life in the stable, you were going to die there, and the course of your life was largely laid out for you to see by your cutie mark party. So the Overmare insisted that a new song be added to the stable broadcast's repertoire each week, that public areas were brightly painted and adored with uplifting and motivational murals, that regular parties were planned in the atrium all in an effort to distract and stave off depression. Reality came crashing back as I stared at the eternally blank gray. Beautifying maintenance areas was tragically low priority already, and the pip-butt technician stall was one of the least trafficked parts of maintenance. I felt my ears droop as I started to realize that I'd be staring at this same gray wall nearly every day for the rest of my life. Oh dear, is it really that bad, period? And there she was. Velvet Remedy, the gorgeous charcoal-coated unicorn with streaks of color in her white mane and with a voice as smooth as silk and rich as finest chocolate, was standing in the doorway of my stall. I felt immediately grateful that I had finished the cleaning and simultaneously ashamed that the room was so beneath her. I couldn't believe she was standing there. I'd seen her on the stage above us at late parties, I'd listened to her songs incessantly, recording every new one on my pip-butt so that I didn't have to wait to hear it again. I'll admit it now, I'd had a crush on Velvet Remedy for years. Me and at least 300 other ponies. My mother used to laugh at that. Little Pip, she would say, chortling with her friends. Velvet Remedy's barn door doesn't swing that way, period. It took me a couple years to understand what my mother had meant by that. and took me several seconds to process that Velvet Remedy had just asked me something. Wahaha question mark wonderful response, little Pip. So elegant. I wanted to dig my way through the concrete floor and pull the chunks over the top of me. She smiled sweetly. She smiled at me. And in that amazing voice, you looked so heartbroken when I came in. Is there anything I can do? Question mark Velvet Remedy offered. To help me. I was shocked back to my senses. Velvet Remedy must have some reason to be done here. Some pip-buck reason. It wasn't like she would just go wandering around maintenance, after all. Looking around, I realized that I was the only pony on duty. My teacher was, as usual, asleep in his office. Oh no, it was N-nothing period. I tried to regain composure. How may I be of assistance? Question mark Velvet Remedy's expression was both compassionate and unconvinced, but she lifted a forehoof, raising her pip-buck up to my gaze. A more elegant model than mine, with her initials and cutie mark, a beautiful bird with wings outstretched and beak opened in song, embellishing it tastefully. I hate to be a bother, but it's begun to chafe. Could you replace the padding? Question mark. Oh, absolutely! Exclamation point. I was already levitating. The special keys used to unlock a pip-buck from a pony's foreleg. As an apprentice pip-buck technician, I had all manner of special precision tools in the pockets of my utility barding. He'll have it done in right quick! Exclamation point. The pip-buck came off with a click. Velvet Remedy chuckled hesitantly, lowering her hoof. Oh no, that's alright. Take your time. I'm going to put some salve on this leg back in my room and rest up for the afternoon period. That's right. Velvet Remedy was performing at the Stable 2 Saloon tomorrow night. I would have to polish it up, make it worthy of being worn above her hoof. If I spent all night on it, I could give it a full tune-up, have it running as smoothly as the day she got it, and still have it back to her before the show. Alright. I'll have it back to you by this time tomorrow. You won't be disappointed. I promise! Exclamation point. She smiled at me again, and all the gray in the world could darken my day. Thank you period. And then she turned to go. I watched as her cutie mark disappeared around the doorway. Then she was gone. The next day, I was whistling one of Velvet Remedy's songs as I walked down the halls towards her room. Her pip-buck was hovering along beside me in a field of magical levitation, freshly padded with the best lining I could find, looking shiny and new. I was tired from a long night of work, but in high spirits. Velvet Remedy was going to be so happy with my work. Turning the corner, I was startled out of my reverie by the mass of ponies gathered outside Velvet Remedy's room. Damn, I was going to have to battle my way through hoofprint seekers and paparazzi. Levitating the pip-buck higher, I started to shove my way into the crowd. She's gone! Exclamation point. How could she leave? Question mark. The hushed voices and panicked whinnies around me grew alarming. Why would she abandon us? Question mark. Gone. Velvet Remedy was gone. And then the words that stopped me cold. I didn't think the stable door even could open! Exclamation point. She was gone. OUTSIDE? Question mark. Exclamation point. Don't worry, every penny! Exclamation point. Boomed the voice of the overmare from somewhere in the crowd. I have the tag of each and every pony in the stable. I will personally send out a rescue party. We'll have our Velvet back by the end of the day. Worry not period. I felt I was drowning in cold, wet cement. My gaze slowly moved up towards the pip-buck floating above me. I lowered my head, slowly trying to back out of the crowd, curling the floating pip-buck close. When the overmare brought up Velvet Remedy's tag, it would lead every penny not to Velvet but to her pip-buck sitting in the maintenance with the thumb. I backed into somebody, startling me enough that the levitation field evaporated in a poof and the clean and shiny pip-buck clattered to the floor. Turning, I found myself eye to eye with the overmare. She didn't speak, her gaze turning to the pip-buck on the ground. Velvet Remedy's initials and cutie mark clearly visible. What is this? Question mark. The overmare spoke slowly, dangerously. All eyes turned to me. I could feel every pair of eyes. Nobody spoke. The silence bore down like a lead blanket. My mouth went dry. I couldn't find my voice. I didn't need to. I could feel the wave of loathing. Dozens of Velvet Remedy fanponies, and I was the pony holding the reason why their idol was lost to them. The overmare's voice was low and surprisingly gentle. Take it and go to your room. Swiftly period. She didn't need to tell me twice. I lay on my bed that evening, poking at Velvet Remedy's Pip Buck as the radio in my own played yet another reiteration of the tragedy of the day. I couldn't believe it. Velvet Remedy was gone. I couldn't understand. How could she leave? Why would she go? The door out of Stable 2 was closed and sealed. Only the Overmare knew the secrets to opening it, assuming it even could open. Which, obviously, it could. But why? Nobody really knew what was outside, if there was anything out there at all. Historical books suggested the world outside was blasted, lifeless and poisonous. That was, at least, the common and logical assumption. But a ghost story somebody told at my first and only slumber party had given me horrible nightmares and still lurked in the shadows of my head. A tale of a pony who somehow got the stable door open and stepped outside only to find out that there was no outside. Just a great nothingness that whisked the pony away, devouring her soul so that she was nothingness too. Empirically, I knew that wasn't the case, but the mental image still haunted me. The two things I did understand was that Velvet Remedy had gotten me to remove her Pip Buck so the Overmare couldn't track her with it, and that I was screwed. Being the smallest pony my age, and the last to get my cutie mark, did not facilitate building friendships with my peer ponies. Mother honestly didn't help either. Nor did waking up screaming at my first slumber party. So I was used to being alone. But it never had enemies before. It'd been beneath the notice of other ponies, but it never had one hate me. I really couldn't blame them either, even though it totally wasn't fair. They were upset and hurt and needed a scapegoat. The news hadn't mentioned me by name, just Velvet Remedy's custom decorated Pip Buck was found in the possession of a Pip Buck technician pony, but with the whole two of us, it wasn't hard for every pony to figure out, even without the scene outside her room earlier. The Overmare was speaking on the radio. We are all feeling this loss. But I want to remind every pony that Velvet Remedy chose to do this. She chose to leave her home. To abandon us, her family. She betrayed my trust and she betrayed yours, just as she betrayed the trust of the pony who she tricked into removing her Pip Buck, ensuring we could not find her. I know many of you are angry or hurt. I urge you to direct that anger where it truly belongs. As thankful as I was for her words, it wasn't going to change the resentment that I would face every day, even if every pony kept it to themselves. It hung in the air like cold smoke. I distracted myself with the air and Pip Buck, taking note of an encrypted file. I had spotted it yesterday, figuring it was probably an unfinished new song. I didn't want to open it then, both out of respect for Velvet Remedy's privacy and a dislike of spoilers, but I guessed it didn't matter anymore. The song would never be played. Opening a pouch on my utility barring, I withdrew an access tool that would allow me to remove the encryption safely and easily. It was a sound file. I played it. The override code for opening the door to Stable 2 is CMC3BFF. I shot up in surprise at what I had heard. Swiftly, I turned off the radio and played it again. I didn't recognize the voice. It was female, kinda sweet, and had a strange accent that didn't sound like anyone in the stable. But now I knew how Velvet Remedy left. I must have sat there for hours, contemplating what I should do. But finally, I made my choice. I was going to go outside after her. I was going to bring her back. I stood there, staring at the huge steel door that sealed Stable 2 away from the horrors of nothingness. Outside, and at the two guard ponies who blocked my way. I had my saddlebags packed with apples and necessities. Even a big book of arcane sciences for something to read. I had 2 canteens around my neck. I was ready to go, but the Overmare was making sure there were no follow-up acts. Insistence and glowering looks weren't getting me anywhere. My horn was glowing, but they stood their ground, unimpressed. They weren't going to let me anywhere near the control panel. Hey, aren't you the filly who let our Velvet get lost outside anyway? One of the guards inquired daringly, taking a bullying step forward. The other guard looked away in disgust. I'm not sure if he was disgusted at me, or if he felt like the Overmare seemed to about ponies wanting to take it out on me. I was kinda hoping it was the former, considering what I was about to do them. Thud! The metal footlocker above them dropped onto their heads, knocking both out cold. Earth ponies dash, they never see that levitating something up behind you trick coming. I was at the controls, entering the passcode from Velvet Remedy's Pip Buck when the Overmare's voice boomed through nearby speakers. Stop! I order you to stop this instant! Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. Guards! I want every guard pony at stable 2 door. Stop that filly! Oh crap. My hooves flew up to the main switch for the door, and I prayed to Celestia that the code worked. Then, with all my strength, I threw the switch. A loud clanging filled the air, followed by a hissing of steam and a great rumble that shook the room. As I watched, the massive bolt that held the door from stable 2 shut slid back. A huge hinge arm swung down, attaching itself to the door, and with a teeth-hurting squeal, pulled the massive steel door out and away. Randomly, I found myself thinking in my mother's voice, stable 2's barn door doesn't swing that way, period. The door to stable 2 wasn't supposed to swing at all. Even though I threw the switch, I was stunned to see it actually open. You don't have to do this, little Pip, isn't it? The Overmare's voice kicked me out of my stupor. I could hear the hooves of galloping guards drawing near. I took a step towards the door. Don't worry. He'll bring her back, period. No, you won't. If you leave here, you'll never be let back! For a moment, the unfairness string. The Overmare was willing to send out a search party to bring Velvet Remedy back. But then, Velvet was special, and I was not. Part of me wanted to turn back right there, crawl back to my room and my dreary but safe life. Drawing myself up, I stepped out the door. With the final hiss and clang, the steel door of stable 2 closed irrevocably behind me. I don't know what I expected to find just beyond the door, but it certainly wasn't this long, dark hallway that smelled of rotting timbers and sepulchre air. I was no longer in the stable, but I wasn't outside yet either. I was in limbo. I turned on my Pipwick slide, and recoiled with a gasp at the skeletons of long-dead ponies which littered the hall. The outside of the stable door was marked from where ponies had slammed on it until their hooves cracked and shattered, trying to get in. Moving forward quickly, I discovered that the hallway opened into an old room with stairs leading up to a horizontal door with a shattered log. The entrance from the outside world into stable 2 had been cleverly disguised as the door to a humble apple cellar. And by disguised, I meant that the person who built it had been building an apple cellar. Taking a deep breath, I trotted up the stairs, swung open the cellar door, and stepped inside. Footnote: level up. New perk: Church has lofi plus 10% damage to the same sex and unique dialogue options with certain ponies.